Alrighty, good morning. Good morning, Facebook Live. My name is Kara-Leah and I'm coming live to you from my car in Auckland. It's 8 degrees this morning, a little bit warmer. I invite you to take a couple of deep breaths just to ground in, to really connect to your body, to your breath. And so this morning I want to talk about a phenomenon that I have observed and that I've experienced also from the inside out, and that I've directly observed in people around me. So quite often people who are experiencing mental illness will feel like they're the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I say mental illness and put it in like little things because I just want to highlight the fact that to describe the experiences that people are having as mental illness is itself a construct. It's a perspective and it's a label. There is another way to perceive people who are having these experiences, and it's not that they're necessarily mentally ill per se. It's simply that there isn't any context or understanding of the kinds of reality that they're beginning to access. So that's why, it's like mental illness, because there is another way to perceive it. There is another way to look at it. There is another way to work with it. Okay, so often people who have psychotic breaks or schizophrenia, for example, and those are just labels, by the way, they're just names that the Western medical model gives for a collection of symptoms or experiences that people have. They'll often experience themselves or have a sense of being Jesus Christ. The medical term is often grandiose delusion is the way that it's termed. And I know this intimately because in 2004 I experienced 2 episodes that were dubbed Psychosis. And when I was checked into the psych ward, Lionsgate Hospital psych ward, there's the sheet I have my medical notes, right, and they're fascinating to read. There's a sheet where they have all of this checklist of things in order to determine like how far out of reality you are. And one of those checklists is grandiose delusions. So when I was going through those experiences of awakening / psychosis, and I say awakening / psychosis because I was literally waking up to a whole new paradigm. I was waking up to a different perception of reality. And at the time, I wasn't grounded enough, nor did I have a strong enough ability to witness myself, and nor was there the correct context and relationship with the people around me to put my experiences into a context, into an understanding. And so without all of that, without the grounding, without the witness, without the context, without somebody there to really help me understand what was happening, the states that were coming through me, it all ended up in psychosis, and I ended up in the psych ward. And I was fortunate because I was pretty smart. Like when I found myself in the psychiatrist's office, I mean, I was on my hands and knees doing elaborate prayers to the sun god Ra, because it was just coming through me, right? It was pouring through me. But I was also smart enough to keep my mouth shut as much as possible and not actually share everything that I was experiencing, because I didn't want them to think I was crazy as I'm doing my prayers and my prostrations to the sun god Ra. So I had experience, and I remember it quite clearly. It came through when I was in the shower, of all things. I could really experience the consciousness of Jesus Christ. And I'm in the shower, and I'm in the middle of these experiences. This is before I'd gone to the psych ward. There was like 5 days of intensifying trance-like states and things channeling through me. And I could just feel this energy. I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, am I the second coming of Jesus? And I'm like watching it, and I'm feeling it. But there was enough of the witness there at that stage to like separate myself out and go, no, that's not what this is. This is something else. So I had a direct experience of the consciousness, of the feeling that people often have when they're having these experiences. And then later, a really good friend of mine, Jason Corliss, whose initials happen to be JC, of course, he had experiences like this, and he felt really deeply connected to the energy of Jesus. And he had the same thing where he was getting confused and feeling like he might be the second coming of Jesus. And so Jason and I had some really deep, long conversations about it, because I felt like I had a different understanding of it. I had a context, and I felt like if I was able to share my perspective or my context of these experiences with Jace, it would help him to put them into context. And my sense is that the second coming of Jesus Christ it's not one person being reborn as Jesus or anything like that. It is simply the emergence of Christ consciousness in our world coming through many, many, many people. It is the ability of some of us, and who knows, maybe all of us ultimately, to be able to feel so strongly. It's almost like when I sense it, it's like I drop a line down like to the stream of Christ consciousness, and it just pours through me, the sense of unconditional love and truth. And so it's like the veils between realities start to get thinner, and some people are able to access that consciousness so much easier. However, if the people that are able to easily access Christ consciousness and to really feel it pouring through their own consciousness, if they have not done enough work, spiritual work, if they have not disidentified with their mind and disidentified with their feelings and disidentified with their body, if they have not securely anchored themselves in the witness, then what happens is that the identity, the ego identity, co-opts that sense of Christ consciousness and makes it personal. And then from that perspective, the person who is experiencing this flow of Christ consciousness goes, oh my God, I am the second coming of Christ, right? So you see how the ego, the identity, co-opts the experience because there's no understanding for what's happening, and the person is still anchored in that Christ consciousness. And I feel like this is really important because, it's so freaking common. If you go into any psych ward, if you talk to anyone who's having these experiences, like doctors, psychiatrists, they know this, right? Oh, I'm getting some sunlight there. They know that it's a reoccurring pattern. And I'm not sure if anyone's gone, maybe there's something actually going on. Maybe this isn't just a delusion. Maybe this isn't just psychosis. Maybe there's something happening here that we can better understand so we can then support people who are having these experiences. So instead of saying to them, you're psychotic, you're delusional, you are schizophrenic, there is something wrong with you, it's a case of like, oh, we understand what you're going through and this is what is happening and here's how you understand the experience and here's how you ground, okay? And then all of a sudden it's like we are acknowledging that what people are experiencing is very, very real. And that allows, like, there is such a gift in that. Like, there is such a gift when the person who is having a breakthrough, right? Because that's my sense is that not always, but quite often, these experiences are massive breakthroughs in consciousness. The person who is having that breakthrough feels seen, they feel heard, they feel accepted, they feel loved, and they also feel like there is a path through this, that there is a way to experience and then integrate, you see. And it's not then that they are being medicalized and they are not being pathologized. I think that's the word. They are not being made out as if there's something wrong with them, because there's nothing wrong. It's simply that the context isn't there, the grounding isn't there, the awareness of the experience isn't there. So I'm just having a look at some comments coming through. So David's asking, what if Christ never existed and didn't ever live? What if all of Christianity is just a story? Look, I'm not a historian, so I can't answer that for sure. But as far as I'm aware, I think there is some pretty strong historical evidence that a man existed in that time and did these things, right? And it doesn't even matter, because this is what I'm saying, is that it's not about a man. It is about consciousness itself, and it is about a consciousness, a form of consciousness that feels like this extraordinary, expanded, unconditional love and truth, right? And we've grown up in a culture, most of us have, in a culture, in a society that is just soaked in Christianity. Like, even if you didn't go to church, right? Even if your family is not religious at all, the very culture that we are in is just awash with Christian story, Christian symbology, and all of that, right? So it's in our conditioning so deep. So if somebody in a different culture was having these breakthrough experiences. It might not be Christ consciousness that they experience. It would be their particular God that embodies that particular energy. And if they hadn't done the work and they weren't around people that were able to support them, like shamans or healers, then they might co-opt that experience and begin to think that they're a different God, right? The word, like, And so, I mean, I'm immersed in this right now because I'm writing the draft 5 of my memoir, which is around this. And my book is very much about how understanding apparent mental illness. My book is very much about understanding, apparent mental illness is so much about the context and the relationship with which we deal with it. It is so much about the story that we tell ourselves about what is happening. And that as more and more people appear to have, different kinds of mental illness in Western society, and we're talking everything from psychosis to schizophrenia to bipolar to anxiety to depression. In my world, in my perspective, in my context, these things are simply symptoms of the mind attempting to get our attention, to draw our attention to things so that we can do work, so that we can start to disidentify with the mind. Like anxiety is a perfect example. Like when we're experiencing anxiety, there is a reason. Anxiety is a message from the body. And it's like we don't want to get rid of anxiety. We want to get up close and comfortable. We want to talk to anxiety. We want to really feel it. We want to see what's going on. We want to go underneath it. And when you take that approach, when you start to realize that all of these so-called mental illness experiences are really just calling us into greater presence. They're asking us to disidentify with the mind, to disidentify with our emotions, to begin to anchor and ground in the witness, and to compassionately, with unconditional love and truth, begin to work with our psyche from the inside out. Alrighty, so that's my sense. And again, it's just my perspective from what I have experienced myself, from what I have witnessed in very close friends, and from conversations I've had with other people that have gone through these kind of experiences. So my sense is that Christ consciousness itself is like the stream in the collective. And we are able to drop down into and tap into it. And when the veils of reality, the veils between things get really thin for some people, it just begins to spontaneously happen where they feel Christ consciousness coming through. And if they are still identified with the ego, etc., then they will co-opt that experience and believe that they individually, the individual identity, is becoming Christ, right? And it's just a misidentification, that's all it is. And with the proper understanding and the proper help and the proper context, there is a way to work with these experiences. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up now. I'm just feeling into, is there any questions on this, any insights, anything that somebody wants to say? It's been great to read. Angela, when my anxiety flares, my mediumship ability expands. And it means someone's trying to get my attention. Yeah, I mean, anxiety, there's a certain level of sensitivity. It's like the subtle realms are trying to get our attention. And when you turn toward it and really listen to it and go into it, then that's often all that's required. But in order to do that, there needs to be an ability to really hold yourself and to hold uncomfortable, challenging emotions. And that's where our practice comes in. That's where you just get on your mat or you get on your cushion, you do your practice every day so that you can shift from identifying with the mind to being firmly anchored in the witness. That's what it's all about. Like, that's where waking up starts. You've got to be anchored in the witness. Alrighty, just seeing any questions, any comments before I wrap it up. So, my name is Kara-Leah. I have been immersed in understanding the psyche from the inside out. And I feel like I have a pretty good understanding from my own experiences, I've worked with hundreds of people now in the last few years. And I feel like in our society, it is time for these broader and far more powerful understandings of how the psyche works to become commonplace. Because then we can really support each other and work with each other when we're having these breakthroughs, when our ability to perceive reality is increasing. Because that's all it is. It's like an ability to perceive reality is expanding and increasing. Alrighty, Great to see you all. Raina, awesome, needed. I loved swimming deep in the mornings. I love swimming deep in the mornings too. It's great to see you all. Have an epic Thursday. If you want to reach out, if you want to do any mentoring work with me, just let me know. A couple of women's retreats coming up. Auckland in September and Mexico in October. All right, big love to you all. Bye-bye.